the subject of slothfulness, which is laziness. So this is not just for you, it's for whoever the Spirit guides to see it. So we're going to get into this particular Bible study now. Proverbs chapter 19, verse 15, the wise King Solomon writes, slothfulness casteth into a deep sleep, and an idle soul shall suffer hunger. So he lets you know that slothfulness is not good for you. It's not healthy. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And like I said, that word slothfulness simply means laziness. He says in Proverbs 15, verse 19, the way of the slothful man is as an hedge of thorns, but the way of the righteous is made plain. A lazy man, and it could be a lazy woman too, their life is like going through a hedge full of thorns. Those little splinters on those thorns will stick in your skin and scrape you and rip you all up. In other words, they have a very difficult life because they're lazy. That's what he's saying. That word slothful, when we look it up in the Strong's Concordance, is the Hebrew word 6102, and it means indolence. Indolence means wanting to avoid activity or exertion. Lazy. That's what he's saying. So any lazy person, man or woman, boy or girl, they're going to have a very difficult life because God did not create us to be lazy. Everybody has work to do. Proverbs 26, verse 13, Solomon says, the slothful man saith, there is a lion in the way. A lion is in the streets. In other words, lazy people come up with all kinds of excuses not to go out and do the work they're supposed to be doing. 14, as the door turneth upon his hinges, so does the slothful upon his bed. So a lazy person laying up in the bed or laying up on the couch all day long, the only movement you're going to get out of them is when they turn over to the other side, he's saying. That was 14. 15, the slothful hideth his hand in his bosom. It grieveth him to bring it again to his mouth. So he said there are some people so lazy that they don't even want to lift up the fork to put the food in their own mouth. And that's just pathetic. And there are people in the world like that. Proverbs 21, 25. The desire of the slothful killeth him, for his hands refuse to labor. So the things that lazy people want torment them because they won't get up and go get a job and do what they need to do to get the things that they want. That's what he's saying. And, work is good for you. Work is good for you in so many ways. Proverbs 14, verse 23 says, in all labor there is profit, but the talk of the lips tendeth only to penury. Okay? So any kind of work is good for you. If you got up and cleaned the house up, you got up and got some much needed exercise, and you cleaned up your messy home. So that's a good thing. So all work isn't necessarily for money or things. Proverbs 16, verse 26, Solomon says, he that laboreth for himself, for his mouth craveth it of him. So when people say, I'm only working this job for her or him or them, no, you're working that job for yourself first because you need to earn money so you can have food for yourself to eat. The wise King Solomon says in Proverbs 6, verse 6, he says, go to the ant, thou sluggard. Go to the ant, you lazy person. Look at that little ant over there. Consider her ways and be wise. Look at the little ant and see what you can learn from her. Verse 7, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler. Verse 8, provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. So he said you could even learn from the smallest of God's creation. The little ants out there all summer long are gathering food for the winter. And so we're supposed to look at all the creation of God and learn. God did not create us to just sit on our rump and do nothing. Everybody has something to do. Proverbs 12, 24. Solomon writes, the hand of the diligent shall bear rule, but the slothful shall be under tribute. The people who are willing to get out and hustle and work, those are the ones who are going to end up in the position of authority. and the lazy people are going to be the people subject to them. That's what he's saying. Proverbs 24, verse 30. Solomon says, I went by the field of the slothful. I went by the field of the indolents, or the lazy people, or the lazy man or lazy woman, whoever owned that field. And by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. 31. And lo, which means behold, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. He wasn't even taking care of his own garden and his own crops and fields, and it just came to nothing, in other words. And that's exactly what will happen if you don't tend to your business, whatever it be. 32. Then I saw and considered it well. I looked upon it and received instruction. He says, I looked at the results of a lazy person not doing what they need to do, and I learned from it. That's what he's saying. He says in verse 33, yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. That was 33, 34. So shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. He says, if you don't take care of your business, you are going to come to poverty. You're going to end up with nothing. As long as you and I are living in this world, we have work to do. All kinds of work. The most important work is to make sure you have somewhere to live and something to eat. Those things are not free. You have to work for these things. And it is not the responsibility of some other person to take care of you. No, it's not. As long as you're able-bodied, it's your job to do that. Now, when you have small children, it's your job to provide for them till they reach a certain age. But if you are doing what the Lord tells you, you're going to train them and teach them about God, and you're going to teach them about responsibility. So when they do grow up, they will be able to take care of themselves and be adults who are making a contribution to society as a whole. There's a job for everybody, and no job is more important or less important than the next job. We need people to keep the streets clean. We need people to make sure the street lights are working. We need police, firemen, doctors. Everybody has a job. Everybody has something to do. And so God can't stand lazy, trifling, good-for-nothing people. Now, I'm going to give you an example of one, and we're going to wrap it up with a verse after that. Deuteronomy 21 verse 18 says, if a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and that when they have chastened him, will not hearken unto them, 19, then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him and bring him out unto the elders of the city and unto the gate of his place. You see that? 20 says, and they shall say unto the elders of his city, this our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. 21. And all the men of the city shall stone him with stones that he die. So shalt thou put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. So here's an example of what God thinks of lazy children. You know, I see this a lot today. A lot of big old grown, good-for-nothing men and women living with their parents and still carrying on like they're 5 and 4 years old. You know, that should not be. And the reason why it does exist is because of bad parenting. When your child reaches a certain age, you should have taught them what they need to do to survive in this world. And then you show them the door. Because as long as you let them stay there and not do what they need to do for themselves, you are an enabler. You know, you are helping them be good for nothing. And that's not good. That's not what God wants. So dealing with laziness. God don't want us to be lazy. As a matter of fact, Paul wrote in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 10, for even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should he eat. You see that? True Christians or mature Christians understand that they are to work. They have responsibility for themselves And if they have children, they have responsibility for their children until they reach a certain age. So I hope this in some kind of way helps you, but I know it will help those who wanted to know what the Bible has to say about laziness.